LoreWarrior Online, FNR-5, Fafnir. Overview. The last 2 decades have been a time of opportunity for Defiance Industries. The technological renaissance has solidified their reputation as the principal mech manufacturer in the inner sphere. As such, new battle mech designs have rolled off the production lines, buried in the Miu Mountains, including the Cobra and the Salamander. Brandel Gareth's abortive revolt in 3057 could have cost the company dearly. Instead, though, the brief conflict brought to light a number of design flaws in the company's new flagship model, the Defiance, the production of which was immediately suspended. And rather than allowing this setback to derail their plans, Defiance immediately began work on a new design called the Fafnir, intended to showcase the company's abilities. Prototypes entered service in late 3061, with full-scale production having commenced in early 3063. Capabilities. Borrowing heavily from the Atlas, which is also produced on Hesperus, the Fafnir epitomizes the Lyran philosophy of size and strength rather than finesse. Massing 100 tons with almost 20 ton of armor, the design is impervious to all but the heaviest or luckiest of shots. A sophisticated Guardian ECM suite adds to the mech's defenses, hindering the operation of enemy targeting and communications systems. And like the Atlas, the Fafnir has a top speed of 54 kph, though its fusion plant is twice the mass of the older machine. While this change does reduce the design's payload by 10 tons, it was argued that this increased survivability by eliminating engine knockouts due to side torso destruction. It also ensured that sufficient space was available for the design's principal armament, a pair of Hammer Fist heavy Gauss rifles. These massive weapons, nicknamed Thor's Hammer, combine range and firepower to deadly effect, and despite the system's drawbacks, are extremely popular in the LWAF. The greatest criticism levelled at the design is its over-reliance on these weaponry, with only a pair of extended-range medium lasers and a single pulse laser to defend the mech, if it ever exhausts its ammunition. Deployment. Prototype Fafnirs were deployed to pro-Catherine units throughout the Lyran Alliance, where it replaced older designs like the Banshee and the Zeus, and there the design found a home amongst assault units, particularly those assigned to breach enemy lines and fortifications. One such unit is the VS, or Valiant Stormier, of the 3rd Lyran Guards on Graceland, who were impressed by the Fafnir's performance in its initial exercises. Later, in action against the Jade Falcons, they used the Fafnir to good success, though even its massive firepower wasn't enough to prevent the 3rd from being savaged. Pilots throughout the AF have given the Fafnir the nickname of Mugger because of its combination of simplicity and brutality. Variants. The Civil War was prompted, and the development of several new variants of the Fafnir, notably the 5B that replaces the new and thus hard to come by for ammunition and spare parts heavy Gauss rifles, with a pair of regular Gauss rifles, and extended range medium and large lasers. The Fafnir is 100 tons, its chassis is the Foundation Type 220, power plant is the Vlar 300, cruise speed of 32, max speed of 54, and for the sake of all involved, there are no jump jets. Its armor is Duralex Special V2. Its armament is a Ramtech 800P medium pulse laser with 2 Ramtech 1500Z ER medium lasers and 2 Defiance Hammer Fist heavy Gauss rifles, manufactured by Defiance Industries of Hesperus on Hesperus 2. Its communication system is the Angst Discom with Guardian ECM, and targeting and tracking is the Angst Accuracy model. Stat-wise, this is a mech that walks 3 and runs 5, with 10 double heat sinks for 20 overall dissipation. Its head has 9 armor, and its CT has 46. Center torso rear has 16. Its right and left torso has 32 armor with 10 on the rear, while its arms have 34, and its legs have 42. The medium pulse laser is located in the head. The ammo for, there's an ER medium laser in the left arm, then 8 rounds of heavy Gauss ammo in the left arm, another ER mediums in the right arm with another 8 rounds of ammunition in that arm, 1 heavy Gauss rifle on the left torso with case, another heavy Gauss rifle on the right torso with case, and another 16 rounds of ammunition, 8 split between the right and left leg, and finally a Guardian ECM suite in the center torso. Christ, I don't know what's going on with me on that one. I've covered the Fafnir years ago when it was added to LoreWarrior Online, so I was making a video for this, but obviously as a discussion about it, The artwork is not bad. I mean, at least the artists cover the idea of the sheer weight of this machine by having the ground sort of, deformed underneath it. It is, as it should be, just a slab of metal built around a pair of massive guns. And the only time that massive barrels actually make sense to actually get across the sheer, scale of these guns. Heavy Gauss rifles, I don't think realistically should be as big as that, but as an artistic and visual design, it makes sense. The Fafnir is obviously a gimmick, is literally what it is. It's a gimmick mech. It's not really a very effective mech, and I think other 100-tonners probably outperform it in most cases. This is a machine that is very, very specialist in its design and in the way that you deploy it. This is the kind of machine that you deploy into scenarios where you've tried everything else. This will be the thing that can break through. It's a siege mech. It's a fortification destroyer. It's the line breaker. You send a few of these things in, they weather the storm, they pick specific targets, and they literally just vaporize it with heavy Gauss fire. And after that rout is caused, you send them back for repairs, because probably by that time they've taken quite a few hits. It's not the kind of machine that I would ever really expect to be slugging it out for the long term, and it's definitely not the kind of machine that you would send into just any old battle. This is not... It's not even a command mech, really. I could see a Lyran officer in the narrative wandering around one of these things thinking he is God, which makes for, again, an interesting scenario where you could set up this kind of thing, or an assassination setup where you're trying to, make sure that you take out the target. Oh, did I not mention the targets in a Fafnir? That kind of scenario. I mean, we are talking about a weapon system here that does 25 points of damage for each shot, so there's a 50-point alpha for virtually no heat generation, which is really the main threat of the Fafnir. It's a machine that, as far as I know, as far as just for single output of damage from its ballistics alone, can, cause you to do 2 pilot skill checks in a single shot. It can split that fire between 2 different targets ahead of it as well, and that's a fair chunk of damage. I mean, one single heavy Gauss rifle is enough to literally punch holes through light and some medium machines, and it certainly gives you pause for thought if you're in any heavy machine, or even other assault mechs. In a one-on-one situation, this thing is absolutely deadly. Sagittaire deadly? An interesting matchup for sure. I would say the Sagittaire's probably got it beat in terms of chances to hit, and the fact that at least the Sagittaire can jump around to get into some kind of cover between rounds to cool off, whereas the Fafnir doesn't have the maneuverability. Despite the fact the two have the same walk and run profile, that jump does give it a bit of an advantage. But even then, it's still quite a closely fought battle between the two. It was updated quite nicely visually, I think, for LoreWarrior Online. I think the MWO version looks better. But I hope to see this brought into the Catalyst updated visual catalogue at some point fairly soon. It's definitely the mech I would have chosen for the front cover of the book, to be honest, out of all the machines, because it does mount a pretty unique weapon system, and it does look quite intimidating. Different art could make this thing look very scary. Again, definitely one of those machines that I would not... I would be reluctant to allow a player to get a Fafnir, not because it's overpowered, but because I would then... If I was making maps for tabletop and stuff like that, you always know that player is going to be at the back of the fight, and is going to be the one who's going to take the longest time to get in, and the rest of the other players who may or may not be in other, faster moving or lighter machines are going to be in a scenario where they're kind of waiting for the other person to get up close and personal. So yeah, it kind of slows down the whole game, and it always feels like one player is going to be left out, especially in more open terrain kind of thing. It kind of limits what you can do with certain sort of scenario setups as well, because it's like, oh, we need to chase the unit. Oh, well, I'm in a Fafnir, so I can't chase anything. Well, I'm sorry. You wanted the Fafnir? So it's one of those cases. But yeah, as I've mentioned probably before, it's quite scary. It's big, deadly, nasty, well-armoured, well-gunned machine with numerous drawbacks. I mean, it's definitely something that if it does get caught out at range, it's kind of screwed. It's actually an assault mech that could be swarmed. You could swarm this with a lance of light machines that could easily get into its rear arc, because it's got no rear firing weaponry. So it always needs bodyguards. It cannot go into a battle without some kind of protection. So it would probably deploy with other heavies that are a bit more maneuverable to keep it and its precious weaponry safe long enough from fast-moving tanks, infantry attack, light machines that could get behind it. But yeah, this thing is a magnet for all kinds of sneaky tactics. That's the problem. As I said, it's too specialist to be sort of broad use for any military. It kind of reminds me. It's the idea of like the Mouse in the late Second World War. They were trying to build the biggest, most heavily armored tank ever, and it probably would have worked in the sense of it would have been near impervious to most shots, and it had a really big gun that could knock out any target. But it's a really massive, slow-moving machine with a really big gun, but artillery and aircraft just completely annihilate it, and it had no infantry, no anti-infantry support, so infantry could track it very easily, but just blowing up the tracks on the thing. It's one of those designs that can very quickly have all manner of issues, crop up for it before you actually get it anywhere that's useful. So that's how I see the Fafnir. It's very, very pinpoint where you're going to use it. Otherwise, it's just a detriment. But yeah, that's the Fafnir again. So as always, thanks for listening. I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. Thanks again. Bye.